I don't know about you, but I woke up at 3, trying to stay on Texas time, but let's face it, it's not working out so well. Appreciate everybody being here, and by the way, congratulations, Phelim, on 10 years. Maybe a quick round of applause for that. I mean, quite a accomplishment. We have a panel. Look, the shifting environment that we all operate in now is, I mean, it's much different than it was 10 years ago. We were at an unknown special club last night with a happy hour. Many of you were there like we normally do. Several of us, see Ivor in the crowd and others we were talking about, and Thomas, talking about the shifting environment. It's a much different environment than we were, say, 10 years ago. And we pulled a panel together to talk about the new types of professionals in the new environments. And we'll just go down. Why don't we introduce ourselves, just a quick background in who you are, why you're here, and then we'll kick it off. Jason. Sir?
So, Jason Bowen, I'm the Executive Protection Manager for BP, formerly 25 years police, doing EP for 12 years now. Definitely this panel sits with me. I've just done my Masters and my paper was the influences of AI on executive protection, and there's something that will come up in this panel is
Absolutely.
How it's all changing.
Yeah, good morning. Axel Wochinger is my name, from Result Group. I'm the CEO. We're a risk management company based in Munich, Germany, and I bring a little bit of the picture from the German-speaking region. Yeah.
Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be here once more. My name is Ivanovich. I'm used to be Serbian, but right now currently I'm Mexican and live
Serbican.
Serbian. I lived 25 years in Mexico. I'm president of WSO, Worldwide Security Options, and specialize in executive protection the last 30 years. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's multicultural today. Nice to meet you guys. It's my first time here. Sebastien Bouchard, founder of a London-based risk mitigation company. Came here in 2019 after a 20-year career with the Canadian military, and it's a pleasure to meet you guys.
Awesome. And as Phelim said, I'm Chuck Randolph. I'm the past president of the IPSB, or current president, Chuck Tobin. You heard from him earlier. I'm a founder of the Close Protection Leadership Council. I've been on the Association of International Risk Intelligence Professionals, and currently I'm the Chief Security Officer for ONTIC that does protective intelligence software. And I think I've been in the industry a couple years as well, and many friendly faces. And again, thanks for being here. Jason, let's go ahead and start with you because you're right here and you just put your glass to your mouth, so that's what one does. As we think about shifting clients and their impact on EP, are we seeing new types of executives needing protection, or is it just a shift in the types of companies they lead? And how is this impacting the mission? I mean, are we seeing different demographics, different emerging industries? I mean, I have some thoughts, but what do you think?
No, we're definitely seeing a shift in the demographics because the C-suite is becoming more diverse.
Yep.
And that's something they're pushing for is for it to become more female, more ethnicity within their groups. The current EP teams don't represent that. And that's something obviously we've discussed previously,
Yep.
is that those people are changing in the demographics. They're much more socially online, socially aware, and I don't think as an industry we're keeping up with the demographics of the C-suite or how the C-suite operating.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think, like, as I was getting ready to prepare for this panel, think about the new types of executives. I mean, we're used to CEO, he or she, here we are on the road, or maybe I'm a singer or some type of actor or actress, but now we have social media influencers who, and maybe you shifted over to you, Axel, to comment on this. Like, now we have people who, look, I need to be seen and I need to be in situations because my following it follows me on whatever social media I have, and now we have to only protect them from themselves, but also give them a bubble by which they can do their work. I mean, what are your thoughts on these shifting protectees?
Yeah, I think there is a big change, and it often comes from the industries that are considered new industries. So we, for example, taken care about an executive from the crypto
Yeah,
industry.
exactly.
that was a real big change for us. The guy was like, 3 hours sleep a night, going to the nightclubs at 2 in the morning and leaving at 6 and going to the office, so that it was extremely fast paced. Totally different to what you would normally consider a pattern of life of a standard CEO. So your operators need to adapt. You as a company need to adapt to that, because the guy sends you text messages like 11 at night or 5 in the morning and wants a response now.
Right now, yeah.
So I think there is changes, and it is very important for us as service providers to adapt to those new types of people and their specifics and their routines and their patterns of life that are probably very different.
Yeah, Ivan, you kind of touched on this in your book.
Oh, well, yes, and
A book?
oh yeah. I will sign one for you.
He did not pay me to say that, by the way. I've actually read the book, so.
Thank you.
And it's in English.
Yeah, also. So, as we were talking about that frequently in the last maybe 20 years, and I will be speaking about some Mexican specific situation that it's not so related what we can live in UK, but there are some experiences that might be applied because, for example, 20 years ago, that was common in Mexico that you can walk around with your diamond formation and that kind of things. That even though that your protectee can order to hit somebody and nothing happened because he's very influential and that's it. But with the social media, everything changed. So right now, people in what used to be the status symbol, that executive protection in Mexico right now, it's they don't want to have close protection because they consider that they have an image problem and that they are going to have they want to be more discreet. So they want privacy on that hand. But on the other hand, in Mexico, in just 2 years, we have 22 protectees assassinated and 38 of their agents because the criminal it's very strong. So right now, all our focus on operation is it's based on intelligence and counter surveillance, early alert. That doesn't imply having anybody close to the protectee, but instead of working in a space around the close protection, working in time, attacking the phases of the preparation. So that's how this double change in Mexico affect our operation with new client and new perspective.
And Sebastien, this is something you know a little bit about, especially the
Going on the
non-standard. So
offensive,
what
yeah.
would you add to this?
But first, I'd just like to touch, we're discussing the evolving of the clientele, but we can't forget the evolving of the threat, right? So we've mentioned, my panelists over there mentioned tech and crypto and that young Instagrammer, but then what's his threats, right? We're going from the C-suite that, assassination, kidnapping. Now, what we all see is more cyber. That influencer probably could get his account of 1 million followers blackmailed, locked down. So companies like ours need to be prepared to deal with physical threat, cyber threat. But it's almost, I'm not saying balancing like this, but we need to be prepared for these different clients, these different C-suites, to have a totally different threat vectors, You understand?
Well, and that's just not,
yeah.
but that's just not cyber against the protectee. I'm thinking, and I might get the date wrong on this, somebody please help me, and was it 2016 when that young man from Florida spoofed that he was Bill Gates and spoofed on Twitter and got Bill Gates to give him 10,000, and he did that with multiple. So it's
Really?
also looking out and saying what are the things that are affecting my principal and the narratives that are building around them. So I think you're absolutely
we should
right.
all be ready for these new CEOs and
Yeah, I think that's important. But you're also somebody who understands the non-traditional diamond formation and the hard skills that we all learned, especially those graybeards like myself learned when we were first coming out. Mm-hmm. But now we have things. I think Ivan's right. I don't want the diamond formation. I don't want that up front, even though we could argue whether it's a riskier environment or whether we just see the risk more because of social media. But I mean, how do you talk to people nowadays that say, hey, I need to be protected, but I don't need you right here next to me?
And I totally agree with you, Ivan. The industry needs to be, without going on the offensive, you are being offensive by counter surveillance and researching your threats, enemies, you know, and then the client needs to be educated. And we did it a few times at my firm, that we need to educate them that by putting protective surveillance on you, you will feel more enabled. You know, there's a lot of clients, we gotta be fair. Do they really enjoy having a Paz around them? Yeah, so, you know, but by putting protective surveillance on them, at first they might feel that they're not safe, but with the current threats, you make them understand you are safer, because you become a target if you're easily identifiable by a Paz around you, you know.
When I worked for a Fortune 50, we used to have something with the principal, and we'd say, sir, we're going to be as close as we need to be. The closer we are, the more you should pay attention to us. That way we push out that concentric ring. Let's shift just slightly off of this new diverse demographic, if you will, of our protectees, and talk about how this might affect the needs of training, the needs of standards, the needs of the new protector. So let's just Axel, let's start with you. I mean, what are your thoughts on how we need to shift the way that we're providing skills and training? And I'm not talking about in the schoolhouse, I'm talking about ourselves as critical thinkers. I'm talking about ourselves as operational problem solvers. How should we be thinking about managing in these new environments and these new protectees like the crypto kids and things?
Yeah, I think it is very essential that any operators that are deployed with new clients are really briefed properly before being deployed. We need to understand what client is that, what might be different to other clients, and then the operators need to really understand that and need to be briefed properly, and there probably needs to be kind of quality assurance, especially in the initial phase, which is always critical. You bring a new operator to a client, and you know the relationship needs to kind of grow, and if that doesn't work in the initial phase, then things can derail at a later point. So I think that is something very critical, and we had that in the pre-conference call. Did the training that we provide for operators really adapt? Has that changed over the past 10, 20 years, or is there probably, should there be thoughts that we put into how do we train people and how do we prepare them properly for new environments and new types of clientele?
You said something I think that's interesting, and I'd ask you, Jason, to not to represent the corporations. And again, this is Chatham House rules, gang. I mean, you can take what we say, but don't attribute to any one organizations. I'm not asking for your organization. I'm asking you as a corporate person. You said the magic word that everyone's going to groan. Get ready, compliance. How do you maintain compliance over these new teams that have to have new skills to adopt, to work in an environment? You know, I'm a big, tall, older guy. I may not be the person that you want to put on somebody that's going to the online gaming convention, you know, star, or maybe you do. But how do you think about managing compliance, training compliance, and skills compliance against a team that has to always be evolving, I guess?
I think there's two angles on this. Firstly,
and I'm sorry, that question wasn't in here. I just thought of that when you said that. I was like, I'm really curious to hear your response to that.
You know, the executives that we protect need educating and need to comply with what we're telling them. So whether that's from a social media perspective, logging onto Wi-Fi at hotels, leaving their laptop or their phones lying around, there's definitely an educational piece for them that they fit in with us. But there's also, as you mentioned, you know, EP training does not cover digital or cyber or any of those facets, and it needs to.
Yep.
Because it's as big a threat as the physical is.
Yep.
And you know, teams now almost need to have a digital officer with them as part of the team to put that bubble around the principle that it's a physical protection, it's a digital protection, and some principals who are madly keen on their health, it's a well-being protection.
Yeah.
And you've got to integrate the three.
I spent, as well as in the corporate EP space, I spent 30 years in the military, most of it in the reserves in the U.S., and I retired as a lieutenant colonel in information operations. One of the last cool things I got to do was tour a bunch of GSOCs in the greater DC area. And at the time, and this is, I can say it now, it's unclassified, but at the time, to your point, the Secret Service, before anyone was really even talking about, had a digital protection officer. And it wasn't so much the cyber guy saying, what's the network? But they would come in and say, this is a Bluetooth monitor. Who manages this? You know, who's managing the Wi-Fi? What are we doing to ensure that when Ross Hill is up on stage at the Bully Pulpit, something doesn't come up behind him saying like, you know, free Pedro or something. So I thought it was interesting. Of course, one of the few times I thought the service was actually way ahead of the game.
Yeah, and are executives aware of, you know, having a conversation in a hotel room on their phone with the CEO back in the UK of the risks they're having?
Yeah.
You know, how technology is moving on. I don't think they're educated to how far we've come, and scarily how far it's going to go.
Sebastian, as someone who's working closer to the edge, I mean, how are you briefing? First off, let me ask, as a protector, how are you staying in front of the evolving space of the protectee? Mm-hmm. And then also, how are you briefing those folks on these new threats so they understand that they see you much more than just a guns, gates, and guards person?
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, first point is we can't forget also that with this emerging cyber threat and this new era that we're walking in, it's important that we train our new operatives out to educate the client on cybersecurity, making sure his laptop is not, you know, left alone and stuff. But it starts internally first, right? Your team of operatives on the ground, they need to be highly secured because they're a way into the client. If they're sloppy with their cybersecurity and using codes at the airport and what have you, you understand? Our team needs to be highly secured to be able to protect the client, correct? And the second part of the question was?
The second part is now if, as we have protectees, look, we're shifting as an industry. Mm-hmm. Are our protectees understanding that we're shifting with the risk, and how are we talking to them so they understand that, look, we're no longer just a 3G provider, guns, gates, guards. We're now guns, gates, guards, geopolitics, and whatever else is coming down the risk, where we look at our folks on the intel world and we're the outlet to say, ma'am, sir, this is what's happening. Yeah. And so how are you briefing your clients? How are you briefing your protectees?
It's all about a robust and a good onboarding process. And, you know, we all went through these proposal and fighting with other companies to get a contract. But at the end of the day, you need to gain the trust of this client almost immediately by showing him the network that you have. Because, you know, I'm a small firm. I don't have all my internal support within 242 Group, but I have relationship with subject matter expert in their expertise. So I make sure to bring these experts to the table when I discuss with the client, and he can see right there that our ducks are all in a row. You know, we'll do your physical security, and then we bring this expert for this and this expert for that. All our intel comes from reputable, you know, vetted companies that we like. So I think it's an education process during the proposal process that, you know, the client needs to be aware that we are more than just your physical or cyber security. We bring this team in our toolbox.
Yeah. Yvonne, what are your observations? I mean, you also have a government background as well, if you're okay with me saying that.
Yeah, of course.
But what shifts have you seen, and how are you seeing us shift in what we're looking at, how we're training, how we're preparing?
Well, first, one thing that we was kind of mentioning here in the different, also in the previous panels, and I think there is a lot of skills from a different places, so to say, especially, for example, from intelligence field operators that should be part of what we are doing, and it's not so much mentioned or used in executive protection, and that's what we call PPC, profiling, persuasion, and cooperation, because we cannot apply any executive protection detail, any executive protection measure, unless we have a cooperation with the client. And however is the client, first we need the profiling. So we need, whatever kind of profiling you want to do, is the MBTI, or it's Ocean, or however, or just anything. Of course, it's not a clinic. It's just approximation, so we can tailor the message, tailor the persuasion message to to our client, to his environment, and to all the people we are working with, building that report having that profile clear, so we know how to deliver the message. And that's something that people kind of call soft skills. It's not soft skill, it's a difficult skill.
Communication skills, maybe.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we need to train more, we need to talk about more, because we can know absolutely everything about executive protection, but if we don't know how to interact with the protectee, if we don't know how to do a correct persuasion, depending on each profile of the executive, we cannot move forward. So PPC, that's profiling, persuasion, and collaboration. It's essential so we can work with the new or old.
Let me ask you a question, because I know somebody out here is thinking this right now, so I'm just going to ask it for you. What if your protectee says, I'm not doing that? You can't profile me.
Well, you're profiling him by talking with him. You know, since the first moment you're come to have a talk with the protectee, you start profiling. When we are talking with the people around him, you're profiling. I mean, you're not let me profile you. Of course, not. That doesn't work that way. So you're working profiling from the.
That was a short contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, what about though the second part of that, like ourselves, as you know, when you run a training course or you're bringing people into your organization, how are you then when they say, hey, look, I got an 8.9 on my CP skills test, and my hard skills are great, and I can kill you with a rubber band? How are you then saying, that's great, I don't want you to lose that, but I need you to think about these new skills, these new areas such as digital? We'll come to that. How are you approaching that?
Me?
Yeah, you first, and then.
Okay, so first, lately, in at least in Mexico, and everybody are Rambo, so that kind of guys. So you normally lead with them who are want to work in your company. But what we do is we do more recruitment, because we approach to the people who are used to work in the organization, like Mexican intelligence organization. And those kind of profiles, that people who are thinking in a different way. We are not hiring that much. The ninjas, and the Rambos. So we are mostly focused to recruit people. We approach to recruit people who are working in intelligence organization and have that kind of formation, so that they can fit with what we are doing. Sorry,
Sebastian, we're going to add to that.
No, I wasn't.
Anybody else before we move on?
Well, yeah, a quick one. I've rarely seen people that I hire that bring those cyber and digital and cybersecurity skills with them, to be honest. So obviously, that is really something that is a lack in terms of training that we provide. Some of the guys have a personal interest in that because they're a little bit tech interested, so they adapt. But others, you really have to coach and educate and make them understand that, yes, the physical element, of course, is what they're there for. But without the cyber piece, they're not doing the job in the proper way. So I think that's something
And I think a lot
getting
of folks,
more and more important. And it's difficult because it's very fast-paced.
But a lot of folks coming in the industry, I mean, I'm a big fan of mentoring. I'm also a big fan of reverse mentoring. I understand when the grid goes down, we all have to pull out the map. I get that. I'm 100% on that. But the reverse is true as well. We as, myself as a graybeard in the industry, I need to understand what's coming out, what are people doing, where are protectees going, because I need to understand the tech so I can understand the threats around the tech, as opposed to saying tech bad. And I know we were talking before about tech and things like ChatGPT, generative AI. I mean, what do you add to this, sir?
I just think when you get your ninja new out the box and they join your team, you can't just leave them to it. I totally agree with what you said about mentoring them, but also have a training plan that's relevant to the job they're doing. So if it involves digital, find courses that fit in with that. And that's not just for the new out the box ninja, that's for everybody. Far too many people with the industry do their course, get their badge, and just work. You've got to look at your continual development and continued development that keeps you up to speed with what's coming.
Well, interesting, and I'm not outing you, but congrats on your recent master's degree. I mean, do you mind talking a little bit about that? Because I think it's fascinating that we're now seeing AI and protection coming out in more like certifications, actual formal education. I mean, what are your thoughts around these emerging threats beyond, let's say, just straight digital, now to this like narrative AI,
Yeah, so I've just done a master's in senior leadership, and my final paper was AI and executive protection. And it basically focused on the integration of physical, digital, and well-being, but also looked at the threats that AI is causing to executive protection. And it goes off in so many different strands, whether it's intelligence, whether it's cyber. There's just so many facets to it. What was clear from my research is it's at least 50% of executive protection now is digital and cyber.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to get bigger. If you think this has only grown over the last 3 or 4 years to where we're at, where's it going in the next 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us in the room, look, cyber's been around for a long time, but I think most of us in the room can remember when all of a sudden it was being talked about more and there was money being put around it. And all of a sudden it was just, I remember being in a meeting and somebody saying like, well, when are these breach things going to stop? And thinking like, well, they're never going to stop. And they were always there, we just didn't see them. And now we're hearing about it. So these genies are coming out, or maybe the djinn or something, if we could use a better word, are coming out of the box. They're not going back into Pandora's. They're out. So we need to understand it and embrace them and utilize them. And you and I were both talking about how we've used generative AI to help organize thoughts. And there's ways that you can lock it down. I mean, what about others? How are you thinking about digital threats, but also ways that digital enhancement to your protection effort?
Yeah, I think that it really has to both sides. It is a threat factor, but it can help you tremendously if you use it in the right way. I would really like to read your paper, because this AI thing is, for me, still a little bit of a black hole. Everyone's talking AI, but I have the feeling not everyone really knows what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah. Machine learning is not AI.
Yeah. But yeah, cyber certainly is one of the big threat and attack vectors, and if you don't cover that flank,
Yeah.
you might be in trouble faster than on the physical side.
Yeah. Ivan, what are you seeing in this space?
Well, there is 2 things. We were just talking like minutes before we started the panel, and I've just returned from a Latin America country where we were working with the presidential security training, and that director was telling to the audience that the new agents who were starting to work in presidential security, they were starting to take their cell phones and say, okay, here we are with the president and their stories in front of this and that place. So so it's really too much of ignorance about this kind of threat. I mean, without going in anything so sophisticated, just a very simple thing to know that not to report your thing in the stories.
So let me just say this. If you do a detail and you don't post it, that's fine.
That was
I was having an online chat with somebody before, and they're like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm working on something. Like, well, if you post about it, does it not happen? I was like, no, it still happened. It's like I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich the other day, but I didn't post about it. It still happened. It was grand, by the way.
And there's another thing also related to the security professionals, and it's important to mention that many security professionals, as a security professional, as especially as executive protection professionals, you can be targeted by foreign intelligence agency, by any other kind of enemy, and that things are happening very much online lately, very much online. So that's one of the things that we need to create the awareness, and it's very easy to get in that trap.
I'm sure everyone in the room has kind of followed that DPR case where we had employees, virtual employees that we discovered, oh gosh, we're actually working out of North Korea, stealing IP. I mean, you know, think about what things you could get from an EP agent. Hey, we've got a job for you. We want to know your background. Okay, sorry, that job disappeared, but now I've started profiling an individual. I mean, we very much, everyone in this room, especially if you're working around government, high net worth individuals or the corporate space, we're very much targets for insider risk. And if you're at a corporation, you're not, you know, talking to your insider risk folks or thinking about them as your centers of gravities in your organizations. I mean, you know, that is definitely something I'm very passionate about and
So
talk
that,
about that quite
yeah,
a bit.
that's one thing we have to have control in.
Sebastien, what do you add to this?
Quickly, I could add also that, you know, the next decade, I don't want to put a number on it, but we are entering a difficult era for protection because, you know, when it was all about physical, and like you said it earlier, Pez, and, you know, it was easy. If the client does not want bodyguards around, we can fill gaps, we can do protective surveillance, he will still be secured with him not wanting to really. But we just mentioned it earlier, right? Think about it. When they don't want to adhere to the policies we're putting in place about laptop security and their personal device security, if they disregard it, then what do? Do we have a tool to protect them unbeknown to them, you know? So I don't have the answer for that. That's why I think education, and they might come up with a tool someday that the BG can have in his pocket, and it creates a bubble around the client, but it's not existing at the moment. So what are we going to do when the client is not adhering to the policies, and we can't just protect him? He's not doing it. You
I
understand
think
what I
the
mean?
U.S. Army calls those acorns.
Yeah, the
when they work to
ACM.
block all
So
sig-
are they going to have an
signals,
ECM? Yeah, exactly. So
I remember,
that's, you know, I don't know the
trucking
answer.
down an alleyway in Afghanistan with an acorn going, and I was like, man, this is great. This is going to block all signals. And all of a sudden the radio went off, and I thought,
Can't talk to each other.
Houston, we have a problem. Let's go back to you, sir, and let's talk about this like online presence and how online is now a threat indicator and a threat vector that we have to look at. I mean, how are you thinking about that, and how are you adding that into your
That sort of
protection
ties in with what Sebastien was saying about whether the client will comply with what you're asking them to.
See what I
And
did there?
that very much depends who the client is. Because if it's an ultra high net worth client or an individual, you can't really make them do it.
Right.
If it's something we work for a corporation, then they have to be compliant because they're representing that organisation, and the risks to them risks the brand and reputation of that business.
Well, there's a bit of mandate. If you think about why, if I'm a protectee, why am I here? If I'm in the government space, I'm here because there's a law or there's something, and I have a badge, and I'm here to protect you. Sorry you don't like it. I may not like it either, but I'm going to do this. You could work for an organization that really doesn't have a mandate, but they realize they need it, and then you have other organizations that's mandated all the way from the board. I would suggest that we'll continue to see, at least in the American theater, probably here too, more boards getting involved in the protection space, and I think it will extend to now. What are you doing to? How are you highlighting yourself electronically or
Well,
online?
it's do you want protection where it's not a choice? You're having it because you represent the country. Are you going online? No, because we're telling you not to.
Yeah.
So
As opposed to, hey, I'm an online gamer. You tell me I can't be online. I mean, I need to like film this right now because it's important for me. That's how I make money, and that's how I pay you. So how do you find that? You know, what's the conversation of that balance with that protectee to say, great, man, we want to support you, but can we maybe put that up 25 minutes from now or do something when we're not in this space? I mean, anybody have thoughts about those conversations? With a 25-year, my wife is also in the industry. She worked for a large multinational, and for a while she was managing events, and one of the events she managed was online gaming conferences. You all would have heard of this. And she was like, it really opened my eyes because she went from managing high net worth individuals to now I'm managing 25-year-olds that are really trying to cause a ruckus because they really need to do this, and they're trying to make a bit of a ruckus behind them because then they get more followers, and we're trying to figure out how to protect these people. All these stalkers are showing up, and they're really wanting to be part of the mix, but they also turn to you and say, hey, I'm uncomfortable. What are you going to do about this?
I do have
Sebastien?
some type of start point, if I can. You know, so we discussed at the beginning the new kind of protectees, right? The gamers, the Instagrammers, crypto. And I think one way to approach it as a group is a quality pen test and red team on this new client. When he's pushing back so much, and he's really vulnerable because he's not listening to anything, if you put a good red team in that locks his account, he will panic. Anyway, that's what we're going to do when we have a client like that. We'll lock all his money down.
Also,
And then he'll be happy to see.
Hey, guess
No,
what?
but it is a way. It's a quality pen test red team, unbeknown to him, and he will understand pretty quick because then we release it. We say, look,
Well,
you see, you're
but-
vulnerable.
And to be clear, back to mandates too, if it's a government mandate, I mean, I can see Lieutenant Colonel Randolph having a time where like there's a red team and a pen test coming. We don't know when, it's between these times, get ready for it. But I can see former Senior Director Randolph going, we're going to do a pen test at 5:05 on Friday. At 5:05 on Friday. Make sure the boss isn't in his office.
Well, once again, I think that one of the main points are the communication, persuasion, because
Yeah.
you know we are so fixed in what we want to do in our own perspective. I mean, so we want to impose things, and many times our recommendations are not so reasonable. So that's obvious that it's going to be rejected. So we first need to put ourselves in the perspective of the protectee once we know him, and then we try to make movements and use the any conversational persuasional techniques, or the Robert Cialdini is one of the biggest authors for that I recommend you highly, because if we don't know how to negotiate with the protectee and his surroundings, we won't have a good results. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, from the service provider perspective, I want to have long contracts and not the short contracts that we just have been.
Hey, look, I tell you right now, we have a client right now. Impossible to do it. Done it, but
Yeah.
you just show them. Look, you're vulnerable.
But some
that's-
clients, though, and I think you're right, to kind of sandwich what you're saying with what Ivana said, like, look, there are some protectees, if you bring them in and say, hey, look, we're going to come and do this. We're going to do it at your house. We want to do it. It'll help you. It'll help you understand how to protect your staff, your children, yourself, and kind of walk through it instead of like, guess what? I just walked in your front door. Boom! Well, that's probably not going so well. But
Look, if you think that's
but if you bring them into the fold and say, this is how we're going to do it, and then we want to do it quarterly.
Yeah, okay.
Why? Because we care about you, we care about your family, we care about your safety. We also care about our own staff because we don't want to inadvertently put our, I mean, we're all protectors and we're ready to catch a bullet or whatever, but at the end of the day, you don't want to just openly go into a bad situation if you don't have to. So.
Yeah, and then I agree to Ivan, it's a lot about communication. If you need to bring over that message. I think I can't push too hard as a service provider, otherwise, you get resistance, and resistance isn't good in that case. If you're able to convince, fine. And then on the other hand, I sometimes have to say, okay, I'm just your consultant, I'm your advisor. I give you my honest opinion based on facts. If you don't accept it, we'll still do our best, but maybe there are some limitations.
Well, there's this idea in the military, and sorry, I'm just using all my militaryisms today. It must be the jet lag of you would present and say, here's all the issues you're having in this unit or in this organization. And as the boss, you might look at that list and say, this one, I'm going to circle exit, which in American military logistics, that means I'm accepting risk. So I think you're absolutely right. As consultants sometime, even internally, hey boss, here's the risk we have from all the work we've done, both digitally, physically. Here's the risks, here's what we think the mitigating factors are, and if the boss says, I'm going to circle X that one, well, you've accepted risk. You're accepting the risk, okay, then we still have to do what we can to mitigate it, but at the end of the day, if they are saying, we're happy to walk down the street in Baghdad, or we're happy to walk down Soho with, with some board shorts and a surfboard at 1 a.m. on Saturday, okay, I guess we're doing that, but it's going to cost a little more money because we're going to have to put some surveillance detection folks on you. What do you add to this from your lens?
Only just harping back to what you're saying about, rather doing a hit on them, actually going in and explaining the risks. That's educating the family as well, from a social media perspective. Kids posting can cause as many problems for the client as the client posting.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a big package to do around the whole family.
Well, I think we're going to talk about this afternoon, maybe as a preview, like, where is security now? Where does safety lie? Where is the edge? I mean, whatever your feelings are in COVID showed us one thing, which is people are now working from home, although some are coming back. Where does the security edge lie? If you're a corporation, where does your mandate lie? If you're going in, you're consulting somebody, how do you consult on them and say, look, you're locked down, but your kid is over here on his iPad on Roblox or looking at TikToks. What are we going to do? But I have one more question as we kind of come up on time, but I'd like to just pause and say, like, questions or thoughts from the room. I mean, are we on base? Are we off base? Is there any burning questions somebody might have? Anybody want to get red teamed? I know a man. Final question for you all, like 1 year from now at the 11th annual, we're here with the same panel. What have we learned? Pull out your Palantir, if you will, and look at the crystal ball and say, what Gandalf might say, what have we learned?
I think the CEO shooting in the States has made everybody look at how we do EP. Some people have used it to their advantage, probably wrongly, to increase their teams. Some people have used it correctly to review what they're currently doing. But I certainly think that will have a long-term effect for the next 12 months.
I agree. I think this, one thing to talk about on the break, if you haven't already, is this growing meta. Maybe hit up Ross, because we've had many conversations about this. Like the growing meta, eat the rich, kill your boss, that's not going away. I agree. That's still there.
Yeah, and although that incident didn't actually really change very much,
No.
it did in their eyes. You know, they don't want to get shot. And yeah, I think that's not going away. That's going to roll for the next 12 months. And also, we were talking earlier about other stuff that's coming online on the back of that. And yeah, I think we're going to have more of an AI discussion and more of a nervous individual discussion in 12 months' time.
Axel, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's where really the regional differences kick in. If you speak in Germany about the United Healthcare issue, you get answers like, yeah, that's in the US, it doesn't happen here. So it's neglected and ignored or pushed to the side.
But what do you think then from 12 months from now? What are we, in this space, what are we talking about? Or maybe reflect on maybe what you're thinking or what you're looking at.
Probably we'll still be talking the same topics.
Yeah.
And I think the good start is we have an understanding of where the dynamics are and what the changes are, but bringing that on the road and especially bringing it down to the guys on the road, to the operators, that's a long way to go. That won't change very fast.
Yvonne, have 12 months from now, have we tackled some of this, and do we have more better prepared protectees digitally?
I think yes. I think first the tendency surely will be that we will be moving each time more from the close protection to the anticipated protection, more protecting in time than protecting in space, as we could see the effectiveness of those things in the two attacks of Donald Trump. You know, in Butler, where it was reaction, didn't do anything. There were maybe 100 people there in close protection, but on the second one, there were just one or two guys who are working in time, 15 minutes earlier, and they did the job what everybody, all the rest of the team couldn't do before. So more anticipated protection, less close protection, much more digital protection, and the preparation of the protectors to be able to effectively communicate with the clients.
Awesome. Sebastian, what about you?
He somewhat stole my answer, but
Damn him.
yeah, damn. But it's a great one. No, seriously, he is 100% correct. And you know, in 12 months, all I want is my firm to. I don't think we can get that much ahead from the threat, but we definitely need to put our heads together and figure out how fast they're moving forward and keep up with them. We can't fall back with technology. We can't allow us to fall back too much, because playing catch up with these guys, it's going to be impossible.
Yeah.
So we educate ourselves a lot on what's the next threat.
We have to get it right every day. They only have to get it right once. And appreciate all of you for being in this industry and what you do to make people safe and organizations secure. Thank you, Sebastian, Yvonne, Axel, and of course, Jason. It's been an honor to manage this panel with you all. And thank you very much for your participation.